From 2002 to 2005, Ford produced what was the 11th version of the Thunderbird model. The company decided to revisit the styling from the original Thunderbird that debuted back in 1955. The two-seater convertible configuration, along with other retro styling cues like the egg crate grille, hood scoop, and the front and rear lighting, all made a comeback. Retro styling models were all the rage in the late 90s through the early 2000s, with vehicles like the Volkswagen New Beetle, the Chrysler PT Cruiser, and the Mini. The 2002 model proved to be the best-selling year for this version, and that's the one we're driving today. This is the second 11th Gen Thunderbird I have driven, but it's the one I've spent the most time with. Ford sold over 30,000 2002 models. The next year, they sold less than half that, with the 2005 model only having just over 9,000. A lack of sales caused Ford to discontinue this model just after its 50th birthday. Fast forward to 2018, and I wanted to know how this car has aged. I was also curious to know what these are selling for today, and will they ever go up in value? The original price in 2002 was $35,000. The model we're driving has the iconic porthole removable hardtop, which meant it cost closer to $40,000. Now that's about $55,000 in today's money. But enough about that. What is it like to drive in 2018? Well, you know, the great thing about the 2002 to 2005 Ford Thunderbird is the amount of nostalgia that they have kind of baked into this car in little areas here and there. In these seats, by the way, incredibly comfortable. They're very soft, very squishy. They're not a sporty seat by any means. They're very much a luxury seat. And as you can see, the leather has held up quite well over the last few years or so. We've got nice trim in here. I mean, I guess some folks would say that some of this looks a little bit on the cheap side because you do have some plastic pieces here and there, especially here in this center area and with these vents and things. But you get some really nice gauges. These gauges are nice, big, sweeping analog gauges that are reminiscent of cars from the 50s. The soft and hard tops is a neat feature as well, something that I think kind of adds to that throwback aspect of it. The fact that every one of these is a convertible or a roadster, I think that's pretty cool too, since so many Thunderbirds, you know, over that 11 generation period from 1955 to 2002 to 2005, so many of those did not have a convertible option. So the original Thunderbird is still my favorite from 1955, 1956. Those cars, to me, embody what the Thunderbird is supposed to look like. But I think Ford did a pretty good job in this model in 2002 to bring back some of those styling cues. Now, speaking of the hard and soft top, if you're looking for one of these on the used market, I would strongly recommend that if you do want to get the hard top, that you either purchase or consider purchasing the hardtop cart. Which this one, by the way, has. It's folded up in the trunk here. You can see it there. I'll show you some pictures of it. And then we took the hardtop off for a little bit of this filming so we could have the top down. The hardtop is pretty heavy, and it's a little bit more cumbersome than some other hardtops that I've dealt with over the years from different vehicles. But I think the biggest thing is there's no front latch like there is with the soft top. A lot of soft and hard tops, they latch into the same spot. Well, this one, the hard top, has no front latch up here. So you have to reach over here into the glove box or perhaps in the trunk, and you have to get this tool right here. This is, I don't know if this is the tool, by the way, that came with it originally from the factory, but I got in the owner's manual to figure out exactly how to take off this top, and this actually goes right in here. There's a couple of screws in here. The screws actually stay in the body of the car, but when the hardtop comes up, there's holes in the hardtop, and then you just tighten these screws and they go up through those openings, and that kind of helps to make a nice seal there on the front. But if you're looking for one of these on the used market, I strongly recommend that you either figure out how to get one of those tools or look for it in the car itself. It really should come with it. It's something that came with the car whenever it was new if you ordered the hardtop. Some other impressions about this car just sitting here behind the wheel. The steering wheel has this almost like wood trim here across the top. It's like a piano black kind of a trim to it, which makes it have a little bit of a nice feel to it. The number one thing I can tell you about this car is that it is very much a boulevard cruiser as opposed to a sports car. That's the fact that keeps coming into my mind the more time I spend with it. And I don't think that's really a problem. I think maybe that's part of the reason why the car didn't sell that well. People were thinking of it more of a sports car, and it's really not. It's really a car that you want to put the top down, you want to cruise around town, probably at low speeds. It's not something that you want to drive necessarily very quickly. You want to cruise, basically. I love the look of the hardtop on this car. I know it can be a little bit cumbersome to try to take it on and off, and then you want to get the cart and set it up and do all this stuff. But honestly, I think the hardtop looks awesome whenever it's actually on the car. I love the porthole side windows. It really brings back that nostalgia feel from the original T-Bird. Honestly, it makes me think of Suzanne Summers in American Graffiti, if I'm honest. But this is such a neat car, and I think that it's an underappreciated car. I think it's something that a lot of people kind of looked the other way whenever it came out. But now, as the values have continued to come down, and in some cases, I personally think they've probably bottomed out at this point. I think in the next probably 5 to 10 years, you'll start to see these go up in value a little bit, especially ones that are really good examples, ones that have been very well taken care of and have reasonably low mileage for their age. I think that's something that we could expect. Now, enough talking. What do you say we fire it up and get out on the road and see what it really is like to drive? As soon as you get behind the wheel of this Thunderbird, you really just want to cruise. You want to get the top down. You want to just pray for nice weather. You know, I'm really trying to coax spring to just come a little bit quicker. I mean, I know it's April now, but honestly, we need some warmer weather, at least where I'm filming this here today. I think some other things that you'll notice immediately is that this is a pretty easy car to drive. I mean, it's an automatic transmission. The steering has a pretty good weight to it. These seats are comfortable. They really feel like you're sitting in kind of your easy chair at home. You can see I'm kind of sitting back a little bit, kind of extend your arms out a little bit, which seems like kind of a driving position that cars don't really have anymore. One of the things I really like about this car is the fact that they have a glass rear window in the soft top. You know, so many of the cars, especially from the 90s or before, that had the dual top option, the soft top had a plastic rear window and it would fade or it would crack or it just didn't hold up as well. But when you have the hardtop, you put that on there, that's even more helpful. But at least if you haven't put the hardtop on yet and you've got your first frost and the car's been left outside for any length of time, you have a heated glass rear windshield, it'll melt that right off. This is not a car that I would say has wonderful handling. It's not something that you want to go out and get on some really twisty roads and see how it handles. Quite frankly, it doesn't really handle that well as far as the curves are concerned. It's not terrible, it's not undrivable or anything like that. But again, I think this is a car that you want to drive slow, you want people to see you in it perhaps, and you want to just take your time. Maybe you don't have an agenda. You don't have to be anywhere at any certain time. This is the kind of car that you can really do that in. Now back there we hit kind of a rougher patch and you can hear a little bit of a squeak and rattle, but you really don't hear too much noise from this hardtop, even given its age, which I'm really surprised about. You know, a lot of cars that have a removable hardtop, you can hear them kind of flexing and creaking and squeaking and things, but this car really hasn't made that much noise. One of the things I do think is kind of funny about this car, and a complaint I remember people having when it first came out, was the fact that it seems to be underpowered. This has a 280 horsepower V8, which by today's standards, a V8 with 280 horsepower seems ridiculous. And I know today everything, you know, is going to turbocharging and all that kind of stuff. So you're getting more horsepower than that now in some cases from, you know, a V6 or a 4-cylinder or something, even a lot more horsepower than that. And I can tell you that you really do have to kind of lay into the throttle a little bit to get it to kind of kick down and downshift with this automatic transmission before you really start to get the power from the car. But again, I go back to the fact that this is for cruising. It's got an adequate amount of power for that. It's not going to win any drag races. It doesn't even want to. To give you an idea of how popular this car was in 2002, the famous Neiman Marcus Christmas catalog sold a limited run of 200 special edition T-Birds. They sold out in 2 hours. Another special thing about the Thunderbird was the 007 edition that was driven by Halle Berry in Die Another Day. Ford built 700 007 editions, get it, for the 2003 model year. Those cars featured a unique coral paint, chrome wheels, white seats, and a 007 badge on the dash. The car also had a unique white hardtop. The current values for the 2002 Ford Thunderbird have stayed pretty steady over the last 3 years or so. Currently, you can expect to pay between $13,000 and $15,000 for one that is in fair to good condition and has a significant number of miles. One in excellent condition with lower miles will cost you closer to $20,000, while the best of the best models, in some cases with less than 5,000 miles on the odometer, those will cost you closer to $30,000. I can tell you that values for those well-maintained models did begin increasing starting back in 2012. My personal feeling is that in another 10 to 15 years, the cars in excellent condition and above will continue to increase at a steady rate. If you decided to buy one now, you could easily get your money back in a few years. 2005 models are worth more because they are the rarest bunch, especially those 50th anniversary models. Expect to pay $20,000 for one of those in just fair condition and up to $37,000 for the best of the best examples. If you thought it was too expensive when it was new, now being able to get one of these between $15,000 and $20,000, I think that makes a huge difference on its affordability. It would make a great second or third car for somebody, not something maybe that you'd want to drive every day, although you certainly could, especially with this hardtop as an option. Let me start to push on the accelerator here a little bit and let you hear it a little bit. I mean, it makes a pretty good noise. That's about 60 miles an hour. It's not something that happens quickly. Again, missing the point of this car. If you're buying it for 0 to 60 time, you're buying it for horsepower, you're buying it for handling, that's really not what it's for. I mean, the suspension is really, it's kind of soft at times. It's a little bouncy on some of these roads out here. We're in the countryside here, kind of trying out this car on some of these twisty roads where I drive a lot of different cars that we feature both on and off the show. Over the years, I've read plenty of negative reviews of the 2002 to 2005 T-Bird, but after spending more than 24 hours with it, I really began to understand the problem. I don't think some people really understand this car. It's not a sports car, and it doesn't want to be. In fact, the more you read about the Thunderbird's history, you know it was never really meant to be. Ford calls it a personal luxury car. I call it the perfect weekend cruiser. Yes, it could use a little more power, but the looks of the car and the relaxed driving position make it something special that I haven't experienced in any other modern car. It is simply relaxing to drive. The combination of that driving position, the retro styling, and a usable trunk make it something special. If you want an affordable, luxurious convertible that will melt away your stress, I would consider the 02 to 05 T-Birds. Just make sure you have a Beach Boys or Chuck Berry CD handy and no particular place to go. Thanks for watching this edition of Phil's Morning Drive. We'll see you next time.